doing?
That's fine. How are you today?
I am pretty good, thank you. Put a 2 in the chat if you have already finished your Christmas and holiday shopping. Put a 3 in the chat if you have not. Put a 4 in the chat if you haven't done much of anything thus far. Because I'm just curious. And everybody, don't forget to put your city and state in the chat as well. We are officially live streaming now to Facebook and YouTube and Periscope. So we're getting ourselves together. We're going to get started in 2 minutes. Don't forget to put your city and state in the chat so we can recognize you.
Elizabeth says she finished shopping 30 years ago.
You're my kind of person. Yeah, that is definitely me. Like, what? I might get a gift for a person. I'm just not that much of it. I'm not a great gift giver.
Same here.
You know, and the gift you get will probably be a gift card. Like, hey, you know, that's just not my skill. So somebody says here, too much stress. Yes, I definitely understand. We want to welcome, got Georgia in the house, Tennessee, Chicago, Texas, another Georgia. Good evening, Vanessa. Somebody saying 4 here, that you haven't done anything. It's like me, Georgia, another Georgia in the house. Charlotte is saying nada. We got Texas in the house. More 4s. Y'all are really
A lot of 4s.
A lot of 4s. Y'all are not into. We can get into later, like why no one is super shopping this year. We got Dubai in the house. Welcome, Dubai. Another 4 with an SMH. We got Las Vegas in the house. We've got another 4 from Miami. So yeah, look. Essie said we pulled our money and gave it to our grandkids. Well, that is great. Nice. We got Virginia in the house. We've got New York, Philly, South Carolina, another New York, Michigan. And apparently Angela has her sister sitting next to her. So who is a new member. So welcome, Angela.
Hey, welcome.
Welcome to the 10K Project. We hope that you will have a great time tonight. We've got another Georgia in the house. Look, Georgia's representing, y'all. I don't know, Detroit used to be #1, but I think Georgia's quickly getting up there for representation.
My family is Georgia.
We have Texas, we've got North Carolina, we've got Kansas. I'm just glad our family doesn't buy gifts. I feel sorry for the ones that do. People be stressing in these stores. Yeah, well, these days, I think also online as well. So we have North Carolina here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make sure my dog doesn't go after. No, he's fine. Sorry, everybody. Real life. We're actually live. We've got Florida, DC, another Georgia, California, Maryland, New York. Vivian saying I'm into the Black Family Bank. Yay, love it. Chicago in the house, Washington. Evelyn saying no shopping in stores, 80 years and staying at home. Did 2 gifts from Amazon. Smart. Except now we got to get the Black Amazon. We've talked to somebody who's working on that right now. So Tanya's saying Georgia, we got California and another Georgia, Atlanta representing in the house. We want to say hello to everybody. Welcome to tonight's broadcast here. So we're officially live in Facebook, in YouTube, and in Periscope. I am very proud to present my friend Darold Hamlin, who has been a lobbyist for HBCUs, and he's actually the person who told me that The difference in language within the law and legislation could add hundreds of millions of dollars a year to HBCUs in the Black community. Whenever I refer to that, this is the gentleman who told me that, and he's going to be talking a little bit tonight about some of the things that he's working on. But before we do that, I want to, first of all, again, officially say welcome everyone to the 10K project. I'd like to, I'm Cherie, the CEO. I would like to introduce the rest of the panel here who are also my co-founders. And then I'm going to give a little bit of a presentation, take about 5 minutes just to talk to you about what the 10K project is. And then Darold has a presentation as well, talking about HBCUs and how they can be leveraged to build Black wealth. So, Tawana, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tawana Rivers. I am the Chief Operating and Compliance Officer here at the 10K Project, and I am so happy you guys joined us this evening. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. Daryl, she's been talking you up for weeks, so we are so excited to talk to you.
Yes. And I said, well, you're on mute, Darold. Oh, well, I'll unmute you. So Eric, introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. Eric Spence. I am the Business Development Officer here at the 10K Project. Really excited to hear it. Daryl, you have, you come with quite a reputation. So you're gonna have to defend it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so you'll have to unmute yourself, Darold. Should be at the bottom of the screen there. Dr. Keisha?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Keisha Waddell, Chief Instructional Officer of the 10K Project. And Daryl, I can't wait to hear what you're bringing. My brother graduated from HBCU, so let's hear what's going on.
All righty then. So before we do that, let me just first of all share my screen here, tell everybody I must not be the host. Why? Dr. Keisha, I may have to let you go as co-host, withdraw co-host permission so I can share my screen. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. No, screen sharing is there we go. Okay, everybody. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for completing the 2021 survey. The officers and I had a chance to briefly take a look at it. We haven't delved into it yet. We're going to have another meeting set up specifically for that so that we can make sure that what you are looking for within your wealth building journey are the things that, you know, either we can provide or we can let you know we cannot provide for specific reasons. Y'all know, many of you know that we are governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So a lot of stuff has to go through compliance with regards to this. But we do want to let you know that over the next few weeks, we will be reviewing the surveys quite intensely. And we will be presenting a plan to you whenever we come up with it with regards to what 2021 is going to look like. So thank you again for everyone who completed the survey. So the question is, can we build Black wealth and help Black businesses? Again, this is our little 5-minute presentation with regards to what the 10K project is for anyone who is new. So businesses need money to start and grow, and that includes Black businesses. But Black entrepreneurs have two major issues. Number one is that our businesses are least likely to get funded. And number two is, even when our businesses are funded and they do very well, the community cannot participate in the business's growth. Well, what if the people could earn returns and share in the profits of the successful businesses that are funded? Thanks to the Jobs Act of 2012, Black entrepreneurs have another option to get the money that they need from everyday people, which is called the crowd, and this is called crowdfunding. One of the questions we commonly get is this a SUSU? The answer is no. Another question we get is this a fund? And the answer is no. This is specifically equity crowdfunding, and it is governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Agency. So the way that equity crowdfunding works and the way that it would work within the 10K project, if we are approved by those two agencies, is entrepreneurs can right now raise up to $1,070,000. But you have to go through, an entrepreneur has to go through an approved equity crowdfunding portal. And that is what we're applying for right now. Starting in January, that amount is expected to go up to $5 million that an entrepreneur can raise per year through equity crowdfunding. Then part two, the business would, if you go through, and if we're approved, businesses would go through what's called a bet on black pitch for the community, similar to a Shark Tank pitch. And then you as the individual are able to decide if you want to invest in that specific business in exchange for shares or partial equity in that business. The minimum investment will always be $100 to invest in a business on the platform. And if the crowd makes it big, if the company makes it big, the crowd shares in the profit. If not, investors only lose what they put into the company. So the name of the 10K project came up because when 10,000 everyday people come together, they put $100 into a business, that's $1 million. The community can start funding its own businesses, profiting from its own innovation, creating jobs, and building Black wealth. Again, this is run by the SEC and FINRA. Any company that decides that they want to be an equity crowdfunding portal, you cannot just slap up a website and say, hey, this is what we're doing. You have to get government approval. The co-founders and I had to get fingerprints. Tawana and I are going to have to be interviewed by the government, all sorts of stuff in order for us to get approved. So we're in the process now of applying for this approval, but we have to say right now, we cannot guarantee that we're going to be approved. I will also say that we have hired counsel, legal counsel who has helped others get approved. Again, that doesn't mean that she can guarantee she'll do it for us, but we have hired counsel who has helped others go through this process and get approved to be an equity crowdfunding portal. So the ecosystem that we're building, or number one group are the entrepreneurs, all industries are welcome. Number two are the investors. These are everyday people from the community that would put in $100 or more into a business that they really like and feel that they can really support. And then number three are the service professionals. These are CPAs, attorneys, digital marketers, graphic designers, project managers. With all of us working together, we can truly help build Black wealth. And that's what we're looking to do here. So we want to invite you to become a member if you believe in what we're doing. We also have our members only wealth building webinars. We have our Black Family Wealth Challenge, which you can get the replays for and start something called a family bank. We have had, tonight is the 7th session, and then we have 3 bonus sessions. 2 of them have already been filmed as well. The 3rd one is being filmed in January. We have our Knowledge Center, which Dr. Keisha has been feverishly working on, and the Business Directory. It's all pretty much ready to go. We just have a couple of little things we have to finalize with the designer before she clicks that button and makes it live. So it is a $100 one-time payment. It's access for life. Membership is a one-time payment. And, you know, if you believe in what we're doing, we would love for you to be a member and join our community. So that is the10kproject.com. Tawana, before I leave the screen, did I forget anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. All righty then. So let us welcome Mr. Darold Hamlin. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I'm going to prep your presentation and you let me know when you're ready to go with it.
Excellent. Are you going to put the slides up then?
Yeah, just let me know when. I just need to prep it really quickly.
Excellent. Go ahead.
If you just introduce yourself.
Right behind you. Good afternoon. Should I start now, Cherie?
Yeah, you can start. I just was prepping it. So
great.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darold Hamlin. I am President and Executive Director of the Emerging Technology Consortium. We are a 501c4 nonprofit economic planning organization. Let me give you a little bit of my background because I think it's important as you see why we're doing the work that we're doing and what we're making recommendations on. I'm a second generation, what they call an Army brat. So my father was in the military for 20 years, 25 years and retired. And then he said, son, he said, you will be happy if you get you a good government job and retirement. You too will be happy and have part of the American dream. So I did what my father asked me to do. I enrolled in the ROTC programs at Norfolk State University, got an ROTC scholarship, did my 20 years. And while I was there, midway through, I have a degree in sociology. So back in the 90s, when so tells you how young I am, the military was just starting to bring in technology. And so this old white crone came up to me one day. He said, Daryl, I need somebody to work with the wireheads. I don't know what are the wireheads. And he said, those are the IT folks. And so from that conversation, I became the Chief Information Officer for the Army Reserves, managing some 29 million records. And that's how I got into technology. Started off, my first job was a CIO for the whole Army Reserve. Did that job for 3 years and recognized how important technology was. Went on to get my MBA. And when I left there, I went and became professor of military science at Fordham University in New York City. While I was there, I got a degree in education management and supervision. And so when I retired from the military now, some almost 20 years ago, I thought I would spend my life as a school business official. But I had also been a CIO. And so I marketed myself as both of those. And so it just so happens that I wound up getting my first job after I retired from the military as a CIO for MARTA in Atlanta. Took them through Y2K. Then I became the CIO for the city of Philadelphia back until 2003. Unfortunately, my father got sick, and so I had to go home for a year. So I resigned, went home, got my father set up as he was starting the first stages of Alzheimer's. And then when I got him straight, came back up and started a federal consulting company with a partner of mine. And so all that tells you is that I've been blessed to have looked at the entire American economy. And so with that, it tells you that as we look at how do we create wealth, I just had the opportunity to look at it from an entire perspective and now make recommendations, which I think will be important. And so I think all of us are excited about this new administration that's coming, but we had a Black president before. And here's what I say. We were excited to have a Black president, but we didn't have an ask. So that everything that I'm doing now is focused on making sure that we have an appropriate ask, that ask is informed, will result in the proper, as you see here, the word appropriations. Anyone understand what federal appropriations are? So let me explain it to you very quickly. When the Congress writes laws, they write laws about everything, but it's the appropriation that puts dollars to whatever the law is. And so that's why for all of us, I say the key word is appropriation, and that nothing will change in our community unless we understand that. The second thing that we got to understand is that there's a word called, we must embrace the academic military industrial complex. And what that means is that, and I'll show it to you, that we have been focused, most of us think of the military as just the war fighter. Well, it's not just the war fighter, but it's the materials and equipment supplies that he or she owns. Today, the African-American community, as we said in 2020, is still only focused on making sure we have upward mobility and opportunities for those young men and women in uniform. So if we're going to create wealth, we have to understand now, and I'll show you some slides as we go through this, what it means to be part of the African-American military complex. We can't create wealth without it. Next slide. Okay. Please, I need you to understand this chart. If you look below, there's a book called The Entrepreneurial State. It was written by an Italian economist about 6 or 7 years ago. And basically what it says is that Only the federal government can make investments in research because it has no expectation for return. That federal research has created great capabilities for our warfighter. It's also created a lot of the new medicine and medical techniques that we have today. So when you look at this picture, I want you to notice it says companies like Microsoft and Google came from federal research. If you look at the iPhone, the only thing that Apple did was take these requirements that the military had, and I'll give you two that you can most relate to. The graphic information, the touch screen that you use, that is a defense requirement. The GIS system that gets you from point A was a military requirement. The only thing Apple did was take those technologies, put them into a commercial sense, and then here's what it has resulted in. Next slide, please. I want you to look at the slide and start from the lower right-hand side. Look at the names of the companies that were the leading companies in the world. This is all done by market cap in 2000. You recognize the names? General Electric, Cisco, Walmart, Pfizer. Look at their value of those companies just 20 years ago. Now, if you go to the left or to my right, you'll see what happened by 2010. Look at how many of those companies are left. None. Look at the values, has gone a little bit. Now look what's happened by the year 2015. Alphabet, Apple, Microsoft, and Berkshire Hathaway. You know why they're on there? Because they invested in the three above them. That's how they got to be so rich. Okay. Now look at 2020. Okay. Two companies that are on there that are one that's going to eke them out, has already eked them out and joined the $1 trillion club is what? Amazon. Now, lastly, look, when were those companies started? Most of them less than 20 years ago. The simple point is that the black community has an opportunity to own this kind of wealth, but you can't own this kind of wealth unless you have a requirement that asks to get involved in the basic research that creates these new companies. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Next slide. What you see on here is the military industrial complex and what it's accomplished. If you look from the left, okay, we're always trying to get figure out how we can make a machine move across land better. The ship in the middle, okay, has already 3 years ago went from Los Angeles to Tokyo with no crew. That technology is already being used by the maritime industry, and very soon you'll see no manned crews on any cargo ships going back and forth across the great oceans. The one on the right, many of you may have seen, that's the BUILDI. That's was done on 60 Minutes a couple of years ago. These are remotely pilotless drones. So what you can do with a remotely pilotless drone is that they can launch this drone, 100 of them from an aircraft or from a howitzer. These remotely piloted drones talk to themselves. You give them a picture of the target that you want. They will guide themselves, identify the target, and then send the signal to another remotely piloted vehicle, right? That will put target, or as they say, still on target. So what does this mean for HBCUs and Black community? The military is going to get smaller. What the military industrial complex has already told the Department of Defense is, hey, you don't need to put young men and women in harm's way. Today, right, we have 1 man to 4 machines. They're looking to go to 1 person controlling 4 machines and having the ability to do the same thing with 20 men that they did with 100 men some years ago. So what does that mean again? Fewer support contracts. Hey, a lot of Black folks made a lot of money doing help desk contracts. Kind of hard to make money in that. It's changing quickly. We've got to adapt to it, okay? So as I hear us having these, our sessions with our micro entrepreneurs, I say it's important in what do we become an entrepreneur in? The best example is Look at the restaurant industry. Look what COVID has done to the restaurant industry.
Mhm.
One of the largest IPO is a company, and I forget the name, but they're doing a shared kitchen. And so what's happening now in a lot of major cities, right? You know, you can put your order into one of the franchises, right? You don't know who's cooking it, but it's coming out of a shared kitchen. They've already made automated salad machines. That, you know, and so all the jobs that we have been looking at for years are going out of the way. So it's important for us to understand where technology is going so that we create the right types of businesses. R&D is prevalent. In this administration, the R&D expenditure went from $73 billion in 4 years to $106 billion. That's how much it went up. So with that, we have to understand, I put it very simply, it is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. You can no longer participate in the 21st century economy if you're not producing the kinds of goods and services that the global economy demands. Certainly more required for STEM professionals, okay? Whole new generation of technical skills that we right now do not have the resources. There are many jobs that young African-American women, men and women can have that don't require a college degree that pay good money. I give you the best example is that young man or woman that comes over and installs that installs your new TV or installs your Wi-Fi. Okay, those aren't college graduates, but they're making $60,000, $80,000 a year. All across the industry, there are these types of new employment opportunities come up, and right now we don't have a way of informing our community what those new skills are, what the academic requirements are, and I'm sure there are a lot of young men and women in the environment that we have today that said, hey, if I could get a job making $65,000 to $70,000 a year and only had to get a 6-month certificate, they would jump on it. We've got to have the ability to communicate that to our community. Mm-hmm. And finally, and this is the thing, this is why we're here. We have the opportunity to own these next generation industries. The convergence of biotechnology, nanotechnology, and information technology will create all these new trillion-dollar industries in artificial intelligence and quantum and 5G. And right now, we're not set up to own any of them. So when this new administration comes in, they say, what do we want? We need a plan to make sure that we have the foundation for our community to be part of this 21st century global economy. Next slide, please. Here's the defense budget, okay? Now, remember I told you that we are only focusing, even in the 2020 defense authorization budget, all the members of Congress only focused on the top line, military personnel, okay? So you'll notice I have in parentheses around it, well, what's in it for the Black community? No dollars. We get commissions and councils and reports on why we're not getting higher up. No dollars to make sure that we get more upward mobility in both the uniformed services and or the civilian ranks. Here's the bottom line. 163 billion minus 740 billion leaves about $500+ billion on the table that we have no ask for. The HBCU line, which you see was this year, that $106 billion, I just got a note from Congressman Brown's office. WUPE is going up to 81.3 million out of $106.6 billion. I ask you to ask your friends these 4 questions when we start writing policy about what do we want. What's the gross domestic product of the United States? Of that gross domestic product, how much of that is government spending? So I'll answer the questions as we go. Gross domestic product is $15 trillion a year. The federal government's portion of that is $4 trillion. The federal government spends $1 trillion a year in procurements. And of that, only half of that money is in contracts, the other half is in grants. So there's another $500 billion that we leave on the table every year with no policy because we don't have a program that's equivalent to the government contracting program for grants, okay? And then we say, out of that $1 trillion, how much do we get? So when we go start talking to our elected leaders, I'm encouraging you all to ask the question, how much? We need to start measuring our success and how many dollars and cents out of all this money goes to our community, because we certainly cannot close that gap if we don't get the proper investment. Next slide, please. I throw this slide in to give you a perspective on why that 2 slides ago was important. So the Defense Department employs 7.2 million Americans. Out of $740 billion, only 7.2 million Americans get jobs out of it. That tells you a lot of money is going to somebody. Okay. The top pay for a 4-star general with pay and allowances is $250,000 a year. Our top civil servant makes $300,000 a year. There's an FCS who's got a great title and job. The defense universities I talked to you about, and that includes Johns Hopkins and Penn State and Stanford, MIT. The top compensation of the president of one of those universities is about $2.3 million a year. And I will tell you the average pay for those presidents is about $1 million. For an HBCU president, somewhere around $400,000, okay? The defense corporations, 3.5 million people work for them, notice more than in the uniformed services. The average pay of each one of the top defense corporation CEOs is $25 million a year per piece, per corporation. And we have no ass to be part of the defense corporation. $25 million, that's for Lockheed, Northrop, Harris, L3, you name all those 3-letter entities, all those CEOs make $25 million a year per person. That's taxpayer money. They have a responsibility to include us in it. We have laws that say include us in it, and we're not asking. Next slide. So again, here's what we know, and I've summarized it. Biggest one, the biggest challenge facing the African-American community, okay, is that the jobs we've relied on for years are being eliminated. Mm-hmm. I go as I go on a military base every day, and I look at the guy who's looking at the machine that's scanning my ID card to get on the base and wondering how many more days is he going to be or she going to be sitting there before the machine is going to be there. Companies are already advertising that once that guard goes away, the next machine will come and get you if you go violate their turnstile. Okay, autonomy. They're already running trucks from Texas to California already without a driver. Autonomy is only to me 5 years away. It's been estimated that about 3.5 million African Americans earn a living driving the vehicle. What do we do with these folks who've been working for years as bus drivers and truck drivers, good workers, but are going to be outsourced? That's an opportunity for our community. That's something we need to be asking. That is a question we need to be asking our leadership about. Consequently, there's 7.5 million jobs before COVID started where there's a skills mismatch. That to me should be what we should be asking for, is how do we fill those jobs? And I make this statement, and I say it with all reverence and respect, but the government right now is a source of income inequality. The government only does business with a selected number of corporations. They only do it with a selected number of universities. And we haven't changed, and this is what's on us, we haven't changed the small business program in 50 years. So we have organizations getting $1 billion sole source contracts, and we're still trying to get a $4 million sole source contract. That number's got to change. We have no way of getting upward mobility that once a company gets started in the small business program, it's been happening for 25 years, that at the end of the 9-year period, how do they sustain themselves? No one's answered that question yet. So the things that we can do to make sure that if we use, and if we had a plan, we could use government contracting to get into our business, but we have to have a sustainable business that's producing a product or service that the global market needs. Notice again, and I'm sorry, but I did make a typo, okay? The federal government in 2017 awarded $75 billion to colleges and universities. HBCUs got $373 million out of $75 billion. We need to ask better, okay? We need to level the playing field. Our HBCUs can't change because the other thing that's happened is the university financing is changing. Think about our HBCUs. With the expansion of diversity in other schools, our HBCUs are trying to teach the students not only who are not as academically gifted as they were overall a generation ago, but they have the least ability to pay. So we're trying to run and I tell folks, the challenge with HBCUs are real simple. You have a fixed source of revenue going in and variable costs going out. You can change all the presidents you want, but if you don't solve that basic business equation, nothing's going to change. And again, finally, we need to set up these research centers of excellence. We need to start asking and demanding that we have Black businesses in artificial intelligence, robotics, advanced manufacturing, precision medicine, quantum technologies. That's on us. That's the ask that we got to have. Next slide. Okay. So again, we talked about it in ad nauseum, but here's what I will tell you. Everybody's pointing the finger to everybody. We all think that our members of Congress should know what they're doing because they've been elected, and they don't, okay? And it's not on them. Most of the leadership in the African-American community comes from the civil rights community. I can tell you that when I walk in and start talking to our congressional staffs about science and technology policy, science and technology investment, I get two responses. One says, I know it, because they know they don't know it. And the other ones just say, oh my God, it's so much, it's overwhelming. Cherie knows, I've talked to her about this so many times. It is a very complex subject. It has many facets to it, but we got to get folks that master it, okay? And so we have got, all of us have got to demand and ask our members to be more accountable for the federal dollars that we spend. The school affordability issue is the #1 issue that's confronting our HBCUs. We are now, the Thurgood Marshall is now reporting they lose almost a third. This is before even COVID struck. They're losing a third of their sophomores because they can't afford to come back to school. Not because they can't get the grades, but they can't afford to come back. I tell folks that if you raise the tuition at an Ivy League school by $2,500, the parents tell the child, well, you were going to get an Audi, but now you just had to get a Volkswagen. You raise that same tuition, that same amount at an HBCU, and they say, boo-boo, I don't know how you're going to get back to school. Okay? We have got to address this issue, and it can't be just for, we're just going to forgive and let people borrow the money and try to get in, when there are opportunities for us to develop programs that will do fee for service. So here's what I say Black America needs. And it's all about the money, but it starts up front. We are not sitting at the table right now. Congressman Anthony Brown is the only CBC member sitting on the Armed Services Committee. Again, $750 billion of expenditures. You got one CBC member sitting on the Armed Services Committee. And we're stacked up on criminal justice and education, okay? The money for schools doesn't come from education, it comes from defense. We got to understand that, okay? So we need a lobbying institution. What I'm saying is the only way that we can get into the game, get into the process, is that we have to have a lobbying advocacy organization that when they start the budget, and I've now been through 2 budget cycles. The first year I started in March and found I was 6 months behind. When I did it last year, I did start on time, but found out that I still didn't have enough of the dots connected, because in order to get appropriated money to you, you have to know, first of all, what it is that you want money for. You got to make sure that when you introduce that bill, that you got appropriate support just to get it into the subcommittee, so that will even get entered and be considered. Then you got to get enough support that if it goes on the full House, that your section will be supported. And then once you get it through the House, you have to have the same support in the Senate. Now you know why lobbyists make their money, because they have, if you want $100 million out of the federal government, your lobbyist has got to stay from the time that you decide that you want that money until it's signed off by the president. And we're sitting here today as they came off with the omnibus bill, right? And things went up and things went down and things got eliminated. Because when it's all said and done, you've seen for the last 2 years, right? The president and the big four sit down, and in the end they say, okay, here's how much money we're going to spend this year. Then the question is, can whatever you propose survive that cut? That's just real. And if you don't have the right horses behind you, you're going to be one of the first folks that gets cut. Okay. What our members have been doing, and it happened just 2 weeks ago, they passed an HBCU bill with no appropriation, which means that they want the agencies to take someone else's appropriated money and pay for the HBCU. And you know what? It ain't going to happen. Second thing we got to do, our HBCUs need to get $25 to $50 to $100 million of research money in order to get enough of that overhead in order to affect the finances of the schools. That means that you have to get in the business of research. So all our professors that we've been talking for years about, well, here's a grant opportunity you go chase. If you're chasing a grant under $25 million, it's great for the professor. He or she might make some money, but doesn't do any good for the finances of the school. So we have to structure our schools to be in the business of research. Johns Hopkins, MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and other schools you don't know, like Carnegie Mellon, they have business units that do federal research. Finally, we need a plan, because here's a great thing. Here's the opportunity. We have lots of laws on the books that look at HBCUs as a collective, but we're still trying to work them as Tuskegee versus Morgan State. No, there's enough work out there, but you need a plan to make sure that there's only one center of excellence in cybersecurity. There's only one center that does quantum computing. There's only one that does precision medicine, right? So they're not spending their time fighting over the same little piece of money, that they can form partnerships with the corporate sector and with other research universities so they can grow. That's going to take planning money up front. Next slide. So I did a little analysis just to show you, and this is from a 2017 report. Again, the federal government spent $75 billion with America's colleges and universities. HBCUs collectively got $373 million, okay? So here's what happens, and now you see the power of appropriation, right? The largest entity that gives money to HBCUs is the Department of Agriculture because of the Morrill Act. And as you can see, the appropriation is $45.6 million. It's been around since 2000. And now you can see our HBCUs have gotten up to $114 million as a result of it. Here's the one that should make everyone, this is how we are not playing the game. Congressman Louis Stokes and Jesse Jackson Jr. got the Minority Health and Health Disparities Act of 2000 passed. It allocated $2.3 billion to do minority health and health disparities. But because there was a failure of oversight, here's what happened to the $2.3 billion. NIH took the dollars in, dispersed the health disparity money back to all the institutes, set up the Institute for Minority Health and Health Disparities with a budget of $250 million, and made it the programming office for the $2.3 billion, right? And then what they do is they have diversity supplements out of all the other schools. They didn't build any research capacity for the schools at all. One individual tried to get money to HBCUs to help them build their endowments directly. And then he had to resign because he tried to just give them the money without developing a plan to build their infrastructure. So the bottom line is we did a great job, got $2.3 billion. And now 20 years later, our HBCUs and our community-based organizations are fighting. We don't even get to get involved in the testing of the solutions for health disparities, even though 20 years ago we came up with $2.3 billion for health disparities. So it tells you the importance of having knowledgeable people not only write the legislation, but more important for Congress to have oversight of it. Okay. Most successful is the National Science Foundation. Out of their $7.2 billion budget, you can see the appropriations for the HBCU program, the HBCU Up program, okay? And then again, the Lewis Stokes Alliance Minority Participation, those are the appropriations for that, okay? Now, in the Department of Defense, again, DOD has an R&D budget this year, will be $106 billion. Yep, we got up to $81 million. And the problem is the way they wrote the legislation, they said HBCU / minority serving institution. So that meant that when they put the money out there, the University of Texas, Florida, and California had schools that could compete for HBCU money. So what does that mean for the HBCUs? Even when they got the $57 million, we only got $25 million out of the $57 million that was appropriated to us, okay? Now look below that and see the power of appropriation. MIT, who has a sole source contract for $1 billion to run Lincoln Lab, starts the year off with a $40 million appropriation. Then they get $125 million of military construction money to build facilities on the MIT campus for Lincoln Lab. The disparity continues to grow, and we're not watching what's happening. Now, the good news is that Congress has leveled the playing field before. They did it for the states. There's a program called the Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. It actually came from the southern states looking at the money that was going to Massachusetts, New York, and California. So they set up this program called the Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. And very simply what they did, the federal government draws a line every year. If you're above that line, like Maryland and Virginia, you don't get any of this money. But if you're below the line, then there are grants that are awarded to these schools to help them build the infrastructure to get these schools into competitive research. So the bottom line is the federal government has intervened when these dollars have not been distributed equitably. We've got that information, and we certainly need to understand that our schools cannot get in the business of research, which directly now impacts the quality of education. Because what's happening to our students today, you get the quiz. And here's a question I asked a student from my alma mater, HBCU, who had a degree in biology. I said, do you know what bioinformatics is? She didn't know. She was a senior last year with a major in biology from an HBCU. What does that mean? Those companies that do have programs will hire our students, and then they say, oh, well, you can go work in the diversity program, or we'll send you somewhere so that our stats look good. But we're not getting our STEM graduates to work in STEM jobs. So you can see there's a trickle-down effect. It goes all the way down. It also affects, and here's where it starts at the very beginning. The average compensation for a professor in Morgan State is right around $140,000. The average professor pay at Johns Hopkins is around $250,000. It's that wide. And every time we take a hit in tuition or we don't meet enrollment fees, it further exacerbates the pressure on the budget. So it all comes together. We've got to understand this whole process in order to write effective policy in order to do that. Next slide. So here, what I've done for you very quickly, you can now see, and we won't go through it. But the average school, and you would love this return, if I could get $1 million and get $500 million back, I'd do it. That shows you the amount of money that the larger schools are spending on lobbying and campaigns and how much money they're getting in R&D. Now, next slide, look at the HBCUs. Howard gets an appropriation they've been getting for years. The other schools all share $93 million. That was for the Title III money, right? And that's the amount of money those schools got last year to build their infrastructure and the fiscal plan. Next slide. So here's what we're proposing. Good news. Out of the NDA 2021, the Department of Defense will have its first Chief Diversity Officer. We have included in the Chief Diversity Officer not only responsibility for human resources, we also got included HBCU research and development under his or her responsibility. That person will report directly to the Secretary of Defense. So moving it from a lowly staff level job deep in the Undersecretary of Defense for Research Engineering, where that person now is 2 steps reporting from the Secretary of Defense. So with that, we are now trying to influence who will get that job so we can start moving on the appropriated dollars and enforcing the laws that are there. The biggest thing we're trying to do is establish a HBCU University Affiliate Research Center / Federally Funded Research Development Center subcontracting program. The Department of these UARCs and FFRDCs are sole source research contracts. Johns Hopkins has the largest one, and I have to share the story. Johns Hopkins has been doing this for 75 years. Last year on the 75th anniversary, they increased their sole source contract from $1.2 billion to $2.3 billion per year for the next 3 years. And then they turned around and bought the museum. So that gives you a feel of what happens when you get the right kind of money in the right places, okay? So how we propose to close that gap is that we want to increase the funding on the HBCU strategies law, which currently tells the Department of Defense that they have got to build the infrastructure at HBCUs. We want to implement and set up the same structure at HBCUs that we have at places like MIT, at Penn State, at Johns Hopkins. By the way, the Applied Physics Lab at Johns Hopkins employs 8,000 full-time researchers working for the Department of the Navy and for the Space Force. That $1 billion increase was to support the Space Force and hypersonics, right? Second of all, we want to implement a program to place defense industries into predominantly Black minority communities. Okay. And I give, this is the example that I want to see happen. In St. Louis, 6 miles from Ferguson, Missouri, there's a company called Express Scripts. Express Scripts has a sole source contract to supply mail order pharmaceuticals for the Department of Defense. They're 6 miles from Ferguson. And I said, what a difference it would make to that community if they put a call center in Ferguson and hired up to 100 residents to take those mail order, take those phone calls. It would be a game changer. So one of the things we're telling that the Department of Defense they can do is look at taking parts of all their existing operations, charge the defense industry to put parts of those operations underserved community. We got to change our communities. We can't just have it be places where folks are there, no skills, no jobs, and expect things to change. That's how we leverage the power of what we have. So if we do that, the UARC FFRDC subcontracting program builds STEM capacity, gives our school research assignments, allows minority businesses to get access to the emerging technologies the same time as our counterparts of the established research institutions. Charging the defense industry to put skill appropriate parts of their industries in underserved communities we'll start to put something there that says, hey, here's what we can do. People actually see jobs that are in their community that are real. And they're not these makeshift jobs that we've seen coming out of other programs. Next, we are proposing that in the Department of Health and Human Services that we go back and get that $2.5 billion and actually have it spent in the Black community for health disparities. We want to establish a health equity FFRDC to support 200 researchers and improve the facilities of HBCUs so they get to conduct state-of-the-art research in those diseases that affect the Black community. We also want to establish an African American Health Corporation, a public-private corporation that would award up to 1,500 medical and allied scholarships a year. It would also look at how do we cost-effectively use technology to cost-effectively deliver health care to the African American. How do we use things like telemedicine and testing and all those kinds of things in underserved communities? Finally, we want to establish an African diaspora research hospital in the Virgin Islands. And the reason we want to put in the Virgin Islands is because it centrally locates between Africa, South America, and North America, looking at those maladies that affect the African American community. So we're looking now to claim back half of the $2.5 billion that they've been given for the last 20 years to actually go to causes that affect the Black community. And finally, we're proposing that we establish that we expand and upgrade the funding for the United States African Development Corporation. Okay, and there's a foundation that was set up to further America's interest in Africa. It's currently funded at $27 million. We want to increase that appropriation to $100 million a year for 10 years. And we wanted to focus on creating educational research partnerships between HBCUs and African universities. So that's the kind of detailed legislation that we need to propose and get dollars to do those kinds of things. Who better to be doing foreign relations and presenting the American face in Africa than people of African descent and using our HBCUs to help create new economy opportunities on the continent of Africa. Next slide. Okay. So simply put, we've got to understand the role of the federal government in creating wealth in the 21st century. The good news is that although we missed the information technology revolution, the convergence of biotechnology, nanotechnology, okay, and information technology will create these new trillion-dollar industries in artificial intelligence, precision medicine, robotics, quantum computing, 5G, and it's upon us to make sure that we get the investments so that we can do that research at our school and that we can develop the companies at our schools. Okay. I've talked to you again about you can now see visually how little our schools get of all the money that's spent by the federal government. And simply put, we need to change the mission of the HBCUs from being just providers and trainers of people with skills for the economy to economic development partners for the Black community. And that is, especially in the military, we want to be a lifelong service from the time you decide to join, that you can serve your country as well as a researcher, as a scientist, as an analyst, as well as you can serve it being a warfighter. We just want to make sure that our community has every opportunity so that our young people know what their new opportunities are. And so lastly, I hope that you got from this that the government, folks talk about reparations and everything else, but what's important is to make sure that we get our fair share of the taxpayer dollars and that we get the same opportunity to develop technologies. And by the way, I'll close this out. Our good friend at Tesla, by the way, got all his dollars to build Tesla and SpaceX from the federal government, $4.6 billion. And now he's reported to be the second richest person. So here you have a person that came in from out of this country, mastered our system, created an electric car, going to the moon, had the federal government pay for it, and now he's reportedly now the second richest person on earth. It's on us. We need to know the laws, the policies, we need to have an informed ask as this administration comes in that will result in our community better participating in the American economy. That's what I got. Cherie, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
everybody. So I'm going to stop the share here. That was a lot, I know, but thank you so much, everyone, for staying here with us. We have a couple of questions. I did see an interesting comment on
Yes.
YouTube. I wasn't able to go through all of the social media because we were sharing my screen, but I do want to have the Q&A open here. I am going to start off with number one, saying that I like the idea of us as a people being in the business of research. That was one of the things that Darold said that, you know, we need to shift towards. My question for Darold is, when we first started working together, you and I, we started talking with HBCUs, and there seemed to have been some resistance to some of the structural changes that they needed to make in order to accept these dollars. You've been working on this a long time. I wanted to find out how the climate is with regards to HBCU infrastructures, you know, so that when these dollars, when the appropriations committee does come through and say, yes, the HBCUs are actually able to capitalize on it.
So I'll answer this question. I'll take a quick break, but it's about structure. So we've been trying to tell our academics they need to change. They don't. We need to build the right organization. So if you go to, again, Johns Hopkins, those 8,000 researchers don't work for Johns Hopkins University. They work for the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, LLC. The federal government needs to come in and build that infrastructure at the HBCUs so that so in the end, what you want is when someone graduates from the school and they look at their first employment opportunity, they ought to have the opportunity to say, I want to be an instructor, or I want to be an instructor researcher, or I want to be a full-time researcher.
Is it a mistake for us to depend on the federal government to build something for us?
No, we need to demand it. They did it for those other schools. When, for example, when they set the last cybersecurity FFRDC, the first thing they did was give them a planning grant so they could plan how they were going to spend the $1 billion. That's the process.
Do we need to be more active as not only lobbyists, but campaign contributors? Because that's a huge part. We're not really, as a community, we don't really like fund campaigns. And you showed in your presentation that the part of the reason they're getting this money is because they're funding campaigns.
So what I would say is we need to now leverage 53 members, and it's got to be more than Darold sent it, because I can tell you that the Secretary of the Army went to talk to the CDC members and they didn't understand why they needed to talk to him. So all of us have got to start talking, hey, you know, we need this defense money. We need to do that first. We need to raise their awareness, you know, and here we sit here in DC and we're that disconnected right now. So we're developing part of that campaign, but I would ask you and your members as we talk to people, right? When we have meetings with our congressional members, we ought to start asking the basic questions. I tell folks right now, for our diversity plans, you know, when they talk about subcontracting plans, I'm saying, I don't want to see your plans anymore. Just show me how much money you subcontracted. You know, you keep your plans for yourself. Just show me the money. That's what we have to start asking for, because we got very comfortable. Well, what's your plan? No, how much money are you subcontracting? You're supposed to.
Yeah.
I got to take a 2-second break. I'll be right back.
Okay, alrighty then. Eric and Dr. Keisha, what did you two think of what Darold said?
Well, I know I want to jump right in, you know, being an educator and basically seeing, you know, basically it's the same thing. It's the broken system working by design against us. What I'm hoping that we can do in light of the climate that we're in this this time that we're in, that we can really come to, and you know, come to them, to the departments in DC and such, you know, again, with a, like, just like Daryl was saying, with a united plan that is data driven, entirely data driven, just like he's presented, so that it's not an emotional thing. It's not a, you know, it's not a begging. It's a, you know, it's a true leveling the playing field and really putting the dollars where the rhetoric has been, particularly in this time, in this season. But basically, it's, you know, it's certainly not surprising. It's the broken system working the way it has been working as it relates to us. So understanding, you know, the time that we're in, coming together as a collective, like I said, I think as I saw on one of those slides, like you said, the lobbyist was $0, you know, and that, as you mentioned, was a full-time job, to be sure. We've talked about in this group too before, how do we go about this, you know, because again, we have the Darolds and the individuals here and here and here who have all of these facts and figures in place, you know, the Dr. Claude Andersons and such. Again, we got to come together as a huge lobby, and bring together this data-driven information. And I feel like if that's not heard at this point, then the light will be shown on what really is the situation here, you know. That's my take on it. That is really my take on it.
And then Darold, you can unmute yourself. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, I had a question, and it was when Daryl was talking about, you know, those who don't have college degrees, and that there are positions that they could go and they could get started in. And that made me think about directing those people who don't want to necessarily go and to do the 4-year college thing, and they're not interested in that. But this would be a viable option that they are interested in. Also, at the same time, he mentioned the truck drivers. And that also made me think about those who at some point would want to shift careers, and then they would, like, what would be one of the next steps that both of those groups would take if they wanted to go then into these sectors?
So if I could, let me go back. So one of the things that we recognize that we need in our community is that we have to effectively use the organizations that we have, right? So part of our proposal is that we actually get money to have our community and faith-based organizations actually be able to reach out and develop sections to inform young people about what future careers are. We've been trying to do it out of our back pockets, and I will tell you, other folks don't. They go get money from the federal government in order to do that. Those are kind of things that we have to insist our leaders get. You know, if technology is changing that fast, then how do I know what, you know, I give you a good example, a medical coder, right? How many folks know what a medical coder is, right? It's a great job, right? But how many folks know about it? I always share the question from my younger days when I met this young sister who was an actuary, and it was back in the day. So I was very interested in her not because she wasn't an actuary, but I had to play it off, so I had to go back up and look up and find what an actuary was, right? So I could have an intelligent conversation. We were there for 3 days. But the point is, we don't know even what to major in. We still have a problem where the majority of our students are not majoring in STEM disciplines because everybody wants to be a news reporter. And someone, the Microsoft guy told me one time, he said, I can't go to Howard. He said, why? He said, I got 130 folks in the communications department. I only got 30 in the physics department, and half of those are foreign nationals. So there's only 15 students that potentially even, that we can even potentially recruit. Wow. Folks need to know that what does it mean to be a physicist or a chemist, right? Or a biologist. And now the degrees are being specialized. I have a friend who works at NIH, right? The whole next generation of imaging devices, right, is going to change IT, physics, and engineering to be working on the next generation of imaging machines. So how do we keep up with that? If we don't have a program that informs our community, right, of what that new career is and what are the requirements for it.
There, can I just make one comment about that? Because I know what you said when you said, with leadership. Leadership now is decentralized, and I would not look to any leader to then do the educating on that. I look to somebody like yourself who is way more informed than any of them will ever be. And then I would look for someone like yourself to be elevated on the platform so that you could then deliver it to the masses rather than it coming from someone else who, to me, I've just seen that now. I just think that is far more effective now in this day and age than it would be waiting for some leader to finally get themselves acclimated and understanding that this is what needs to happen. So that's just my comment on it. You know?
Well, let me say it this way. Our role in ETC is to inform and fund, right? Because we got to get that first. You got to get the dollars and cents in order to do these things. So most of our advocates, Sharif, so I'm not a lobbyist. In fact, I hire lobbyists, right? Because I don't want to be a lobbyist, because I need to be an advocate so that I can keep my space, so I can legitimately get grants to actually do the work I want to do, which is to inform and to educate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a process beyond anything that we're really accustomed to. That whole degree of how you get federal appropriated money, as I talk to my friends who are general officers, right? It's as complex as any war campaign from the start. If you want to you can get $100 million from the government, but you got to have a campaign, you got to have a strategy, you got to know who's for you, who's against, you got to know all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to be able to do everything that a person in war has got to do, but it's at a totally different level that we're not even normally used to talking about.
Yeah, it is. So we're going to do rapid fire, Darold, because we literally have 15 minutes left and a ton of questions on here for you. So Vivian is asking, can you set up an organization that would have a representative from each HBCU and teach them this knowledge and how to become a lobbyist for their specific school? Each school would pay you a fee. That's what Vivian is asking.
So I would say that the folks who are farthest along on that right now are the Joint Center with Spencer Overton. They've got a complete focus on trying to improve our representation on the Hill. The Joint Center for Economic Policy and Studies, I think is the name of the organization, but they've been focused on it for the last few years, and that would be the way, that's who I would go to try to get that done.
Antoine is saying, I love it all. Has this been submitted to the Biden-Harris administration?
So we are working on that. In fact, I have a conversation tomorrow with the president of Delaware State, who has seen this proposal, and we are making sure, I'm going through every avenue that I know to make sure that the Biden-Harris administration gets this, because we see this as low-hanging fruit. Engaging the defense industry to help create opportunities in underserved communities is something that can be done, not without a whole lot of money, right? And engaging those folks who say want to support the community. So yes, we are, if anyone else has entree to the Harris administration, we love to work with them. But like I said, tomorrow I'm talking to Dr. Allen, who is, who I've been working with now for the last few months, who is chair of the Transition Committee, one of the chairs of the Transition Committee.
Sasha's asking, what is your opinion on the alleged training programs / outreach that are provided to the community via Google, Amazon, etc.?
I think that's in a little bit different vein. I have been working with Microsoft, so we are trying to pull all this together, but I applaud what they're doing in terms of the online courses they're doing, because again, they recognize that there are a lot of technical jobs that can't be filled. So I think every avenue is a good avenue. I will tell you that our focus in the ETC has now been almost laser focused on defense and HHS, which is what we know. But again, that certainly isn't all the economy. So I applaud what they've been doing on their efforts.
Perfect. So another question here from Richard. Have we leveraged the Black Lobbyists Association?
Not to the best of my knowledge. The lobbyists I've been working with, I've been contacted through either corporations that I know that give me access to the lobbyists, or to either universities. So I've worked with Morgan State's lobbyists. I've worked with the lobbyists for a couple other schools as part of developing this initiative. So I certainly think that is something that we need to get with the, if they could be helpful, that would be another arm we certainly would welcome working with.
We've had a couple of people ask this question in different ways. One person in YouTube made a statement and another person here in the chat, and that is that the HBCUs are starting to have fewer Black people in them. And there is a concern that once the HBCUs get this money, it will no longer truly benefit our community. How do you want to respond to that?
I think that's on us. Because there are a couple of dynamics going on, right? A lot of universities have expanded their diversity programs. And so if I got a free ride to an Ivy League school, I'd take it, right? The last question I would say is, if you take these figures, then you would say there's no problem, okay? Only 5 million African Americans, I understand, even have a college degree. And there are 30+ million of us here. So I don't think that the number of students is the challenge. I think we need to make sure that we can get more students enrolled in the school. And again, our biggest challenge right now is financial. So a lot of those foreign students, and if you read the Wall Street Journal, even the large schools are chasing foreign students because they pay the best rates.
They pay cash,
reality.
And high rates.
Yep.
Virginia's asking if you've worked with Dr. Claude Anderson and some of the things that he's doing.
I have seen some of Dr. Anderson's presentations. I've not worked with him, I've not been introduced to him, but would always welcome an opportunity to, I think there's plenty of opportunity to coordinate and facilitate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the two of you would have some natural synergies. So
agree.
we'll see what we can do to connect you. Glenda has a great question here. I'm going to chunk it down though. Very concerned that once the HBCUs get this money, that it will not truly flow to the small business owners unless you're in the clique and you know somebody at the HBCU. So she wants she's worried and concerned about that.
So again, the project that we're proposing is to establish a HBCU research foundation where the minority and small businesses will be on the board. Being on the board gives you insight into every dollar and every deal that that organization gets into. So it's not the school. That's one of the things we recognize we have to do. Too many folks at Carnegie have tried to channel dollars directly to the institution. The institution normally takes those dollars and pays what bills it needs to. So that's why we're saying you must have the appropriate third-party organization. The small businesses will be on the organization, and just like the school themselves, they'll be able to see everything. So that's the protection we're trying to put in to solve that, address that issue.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are saying thank you for the great presentation. You're giving people ideas. Vivian has an idea for her science and tech fair that's coming up. The theme's going to be STEM, money, and entrepreneurship. Or she's saying that was for 2019. So yeah, you've had a lot of people giving you accolades within here. I wanted to open it up again to Dr. Keisha or Eric. Any final comments before we give Darold the floor for his final comments?
I just wanted to say thank you again. You know, I definitely am interested in future forward workforce development and training and upskilling. You know, I'm actually a high school teacher, so my mind space is always in the future, what's next kind of thing. And, you know, particularly, you know, since the schools, I am still in a traditional structure, since those structures still kind of exist, I still try to identify what that strand is across all of these technologies. Like you mentioned, when automation takes over, you know, what kind of skills are really transferable that then the kids can then graduate from high school and then get these micro credentials, because as we just mentioned, after getting even a, you know, diploma or even a college degree, in a lot of times, in a lot of senses, that they still don't have the skills, you know, that are really what's needed. So yeah, I appreciate the information that you shared as it relates to the future forward careers. And I'll keep that in mind as I support my students.
Well, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Eric, you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I just want to tell Daryl, thank you so
I'm
much.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Daryl, I just want to tell you thank you so much. I mean, you really opened my eyes to a lot, you know, when it comes down to the federal government. And, you know, all of us are taxpayers. So we should be looking to leverage this and get the absolute best for ourselves and for our community. So thank you. It was, I put a comment in that I'm going to go back and rewatch this because it was very information dense and very comprehensive. But you gave, you know, you gave some great stuff that I think anyone watching this is definitely going to come away with a much more informed perspective that, you know, I didn't have previously. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
You're
I'll
welcome.
go next, and then we'll end with Darold. I will say one thing. I think that it is, I think we need to seriously, as a community, start talking about funding political campaigns in order to get our agendas passed. I think from an economic point of view, there are other groups of people out there. This is my understanding. I don't have any of the backup, but I'm getting it from sources that have found the backup. They're fewer numbers than us, but they're more politically influential than we are. And that is because they are funding campaigns. They're funding congressional campaigns, and they're getting people in, and we aren't. And we have an ability with few dollars from, you know, a good consortium of us to come together to really start swaying, you know, some of these congressional elections and things like that, and really start moving the ball forward. Money talks in this country. And, you know, like it or not, some of you may have heard President-elect Biden's conversation with the civil rights leaders, the Black civil rights leaders. If we're going to talk about what Darold is talking about, we're going to have to seriously come up with another strategy, because Dr. King was effective in his day, but I don't know if those strategies are as effective. And I could be wrong. Y'all can let me know if I'm wrong. But this is one of the things that I see whenever we have someone like a Darold come in. I'm like, okay, but, you know, without seeing the money behind it, I just worry that it's not going to happen. Now, Darold, of course, this is a conversation that he and I have behind closed doors, where I said, there's going to be drums, you know, because these are the conversations we have. And I don't expect him, he has a public persona, so he's only going to say so much on a Zoom call that's being live streamed everywhere. But, but these are, again, my concerns. And, you know, we'll see what happens. So Darold, I will turn the floor over to you.
Well, you know, it's amazing that you mentioned Dr. King, but in his final days, and I challenge all of you, I didn't realize, but his last sermon before he was assassinated was right here at the Washington Cathedral. And he made a statement that said, it's not just a matter of justice, it's a matter of economics as well. So he recognized that in his final days, that you can't just raise people out of poverty. You've got to give them the resources in order to enjoy this land of plenty. And so, yeah, we still have our civil rights leaders, but it's time for new generation of leadership. And we need to use what they've done, because certainly those of us who are old enough and watch enough movies to recognize that it wasn't that long ago where we didn't even have basic rights. So now that we do, we need to leverage that. And the last thing I will say is that here's what the American education system has done for us. Every discipline that we need in order to make this happen, we've been trained in.
Mhm.
What we need are the resources to leverage that expertise so that we can now be part of this 21st century economy. It's
Yeah.
happening in Africa. It's happening with other people of color. The models that have been presented, look at what Korea has done in 2 generations.
Mhm.
So again, the models are there. Again, the model for our HBCUs sits right there at Johns Hopkins, right? So we got to take what has already worked, apply it to our community. But the thing I will leave you with is that it's on us to make sure that we ask this incoming administration, you know, they have a term for racial equity as the buzzword for this administration, but what does it mean? And we all need to not only understand it, but we all need to be contributing to it. So I welcome your thoughts, Cherie. I will continue to join in with 10K. I love what the energy and the voices that you brought together on this. Hopefully what we've added will give a little bit more information to help with a broader perspective, and that we can all continue to work together to make our community stronger.
Absolutely. And I will say that you will not be a stranger. So, we have some people we invite back like every few months, and we hope that you'll be one of them that comes back and gives an update, especially as the new administration comes in. And if there are any meetings we need to know about where it's time to really put pressure on people, like those are the times that we want you to come back and let us know what we need to do.
Sounds like a plan. Thank
All
you.
righty then.
Cherie. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you,
Thank you.
Darold. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Night.